Jimi Hendrix, who claimed to be a voodoo child, stated, quote, "Things like witchcraft, which is a form of exploration and imagination that have been banned by the establishment and called evil, is because people are frightened to find out the full power of the mind." The satanic powers Hendrix unleashed through his music, though, were absolutely destructive. Jimi Hendrix opened himself up to demonic beings who used him to initiate the hippie youth into the counterculture revolution. Alan Douglas, the executive curator of Hendrix's musical estate, admitted his spirit possession.
Now, one of the biggest things about Jimmy was what he believed, and he believed that he was possessed by some spirit, and I got to believe it myself, and that's what we had to deal with all the time. And he was very humble about discussing it with people because he didn't want people to feel like he was being pretentious and so on, but he really believed it, right? And he was wrestling with it constantly.
Jimi Hendrix's live-in girlfriend, Fane Pridgeon, also spoke of Hendrix's admission to being demon-possessed and related his demon possession to the reception of his music.
He used to always talk about some devil or something was in him, you know, and he didn't have any control over it. He didn't know what made him act the way he acted and what made him say the things he said, and songs and different things like that just come out of him, you know. But at first I used to think it was a cop-out when he had really done me in, right? And he'd say, "I don't know what come over me, you know. I really can't understand it." And, you know, he used to just, you know, grab his hair or something, or put his hand, just, or stand in the mirror or cry or something. Oh, Lord, it was so sad when he would cry. Maybe he was the first man, or maybe the only man that I've ever seen cry, you know, but it just killed me when he cried because he felt like, it seems like to me he was so tormented and just torn apart, and like he really was obsessed, you know, with something really evil, you know. And he said, you know, like, you're from Georgia, you know, he said, I should know how, you know, people drive demons. He actually thought about, you know, if we ever go, because I used to talk about my grandmother and all her weird stuff, you know, and he used to talk about us going down there and having some root lady or somebody see if she could drive this demon out of him.
Make a whole lot of money. Gonna be big, yeah.
Alright, peace, y'all. Peace. So in this video, I'm gonna be talking about the life and legacy of rock and roll's Jimi Hendrix. Alright, now his story is a bit interesting. And I'm going to break down some things that I found to be very interesting about his story. All right. Now, Jimi Hendrix was a part of the New Age agenda. Okay, the New Age agenda that we see today, he was a part of this agenda in the early 60s. But I'm going to talk about that in this video. And like I always do, with these videos, I'm going to be very respectful and pay my respects to Jimi Hendrix and his family and friends. So, November 27th, 1942, Jimi Hendrix was born in Seattle, Washington. All right. To his mother, Lucille Jeter, who was 15 at the time, and his father, James Allen Hendrix, who was 22. Now, back in these days, things like this were situations where a man was either involved with a younger woman. They were kind of like swept under the rug. All right. But they met as jitterbug partners in the Jitterbug Club. Right. And December 7th, 1942, James Allen Hendrix was actually drafted into Pearl Harbor. And then he found out Lucille was pregnant at the time, all right, when she was 16. All right, so Jimi Hendrix's original name was Johnny Apple, but his father actually changed his name to James Hendrix when he returned from the war, all right? Now, Jimi Hendrix actually lived a normal childhood, all right, along with his younger brothers. All right, he had two younger brothers. All right, one brother that they actually gave away, and his other brother that is still out here active. You know, although his parents actually lived in a toxic relationship with alcoholism and domestic violence, Jimi Hendrix was actually very level-headed and did well in school. He attended Leshy elementary school, where he began to have a desire for arts. All right, now Jimi Hendrix would draw and sing tunes during class, but he was also very quiet. All right, now he got in tune with music, the first bit of music, when he was watching the show Top 40. All right, he would watch the show every day and mimic some of the artists that would come on there. All right, now at this time in Seattle, there was really no segregation in the community. All right, this is where he got the whole concept of unifying people from, right? One of his close friends growing up was actually Bruce Lee. All right, they were childhood friends. You know, Seattle, Washington, around these times, you know, it was a culture mix. You had Asians, you had African Americans, you had Caucasians, all in the same area. You know, it wasn't segregated like it was in other states. All right. Now, Jimmy will always use the broom, right, that was in the house to actually mimic Elvis Presley, all right, to perform for his relatives and things of that nature. So he would actually mimic Elvis Presley, all right. He was a great influence in Jimi Hendrix's life, from what I was reading, all right. Now, here's where it gets deep, right? I want you guys to pay attention. All right. When Jimi Hendrix was a child, right, he was always into what we know today as star constellations, right? And also into UFOs. He was always into the beyond, right? His family in particular, his aunt Dolores, who basically raised Jimi Hendrix, actually taught him about astrology, okay, at a very young age, along with astral projection.
He really was fascinated with astrology, and so was I. And so was some of our family. But we would talk about astral projecting. We would talk about all this different kind of... He would talk about all that stuff years ago, when he was... Well, that was when he was around, what, 11, 12, maybe, something like that.
All right, so he was clear on a lot of the spiritual aspects of how things worked, all right, through the information his aunt Dolores would deliver to him, right? And I believe that Jimi Hendrix actually grasped this knowledge and held on to it through the long periods of his career, all right? And we're going to get to that also in the video. Now, in 1957, all right, at the age of 15, he met Little Richard, all right? Little Richard was actually visiting his mother that lived around the corner from him, all right? You know, and he informed him that he played the guitar and things of that nature. But I believe Jimi Hendrix was too young, you know, and still needed some practice at that time, you know. So Little Richard just told him, you know, keep working, you know. Basically the industry brush off, which a lot of these industry guys do. All right. Now at this time, Jimi Hendrix was actually playing football in high school. All right, and he was pretty good at it. All right. When his mother Lucille died, though, Jimmy actually dropped out of high school, all right, and was gifted a guitar by his father, all right, just to kind of take his mind off of losing his mother. He seen how that was affecting Jimi Hendrix, so he gave him a guitar, you know, to kind of like pacify him in a sense, right? But in 2 years, he mastered the skill of playing guitar and formed his first band, which was called the Rocking Kings, all right? Now, this group or band would actually perform at small army clubs, all right, that housed about 30 people, all right? And this is how he actually got his start at performing, all right? Now, on the Rocking Kings, he wasn't the lead singer, right? But many people took notice to him over the other band members, which means that Jimi Hendrix was really good, all right? He was really good, to the point where people didn't understand how was he getting all the attention, right? But we're gonna talk about that as well too. Now, Jimi Hendrix actually got an opportunity to perform at one of the biggest clubs in Seattle, which was called the Birdland. All right. Now, although he was talented, right, and people noticed him for his guitar skills, you know, it's just like I always tell you guys, he hit that bump in the road where he couldn't get notarized from the music business, right? So, you know, you're playing your guitar and you everybody's screaming for you, but just some strange reason, right? Nobody is actually coming out to reach out for Jimi Hendrix, right? So he joined the army, okay? Kind of gave up a little bit on music for a while and joined the army, okay? And in 1961, he picked up the guitar again and actually formed a band while in the army, all right? And this band was called the Band of Gypsies, okay? Along with guitar player Billy Cox, who later on joined Jimi Hendrix Experience, right? Now, I truly believe while he was in the army, somebody enlightened him on some sort of information on how to do these things as far as with, you know, connecting the spirituality to music, right? Now, the reason why I'm going to say that is because when he left, things started to pick up, all right? Now, after being discharged from the army, all right, he moved to New York, all right, and actually performed at the Apollo, all right, where he won first place, okay, and the reward was $25, all right? Now, while he was at New York, okay, he met the Isley Brothers, all right? When they had the hit song Twist and Shout, Jimi Hendrix actually asked if he could play in their band, and they actually brought him in, okay? So when I said that, you know, the industry wasn't taking notice to him before, right? And then once he leaves the army, now all of a sudden people are paying attention to him, right? So he quit the Isley Brothers a few months later and went on tour with B.B. King, all right? Now, in 1965, he would have played with the likes of Ike and Tina Turner, Ray Charles, Wilson Pickett, and also Little Richard, who was what we would call a gatekeeper, all right, for the Chitlin circuits at this time, okay? Now, while living in Harlem, okay, he actually signed the record deal, his first record deal with the group Curtis Knight and the Squires, right? Now, his percentage was actually for $1 and future royalties, but we see that Curtis Knight and the Squires didn't really go far. So, I mean, you know, that wasn't anything that he was really much concerned about, all right? But assuming that they didn't go anywhere, Jimmy quit, okay, and began playing solo downtown in Greenwich Village in New York, right? Now, during the 60s, Greenwich Village was more of a hippie area. This is where all of the druggies was at, you know, the hipsters. This was, and it's still like that today, okay? But down in Greenwich Village, right, this is where he experienced LSD, okay? Now, some of Jimi Hendrix's close associates said he began to change around this time, you know, to the point where most people that he was friends with didn't notice him anymore, all right? Now, the next time Jimmy would perform, okay, this is why I said a lot of these things are, you know, are spiritual. The next time he performed, right, he would play the guitar, all right, with his tongue. Now, nobody has ever seen this done before, all right? But this, like I said, the same thing like Robert Johnson, when these people leave, right, and then they come back a new person, all right? They tapping into some sort of energy, all right, or spiritual connection that's gifting them, all right, this kind of knowledge, all right? Now, along with him playing the guitar with his tongue, he incorporated lighting his guitar on fire, all right? Now, this is a ritual in itself. When you lighten your guitar on fire every night, you're basically sacrificing your guitar in a sense, right? A lot of rock and roll artists do that today. You know, they copying the same scenario as Jimi Hendrix, but that's basically a form of sacrifice. And after you play the guitars, expensive guitar, you just light it on fire. You know, same thing. So down in Greenwich Village, he met Linda Keith, okay, who she introduced to Chaz, okay, from the Animals. Now, the Animals was a pop group that was from the UK, all right, but they were real popular at the time. And Linda Keith actually asked Jimmy if he could fly to England to record his first record, Hey Joe, all right. Now, in England, where he got his start, he didn't have to face the obstacles he would, you know what I'm saying, in America. You know what I mean? You know, most people, when you, you know, a lot of people, they have these hardships where they can't make it in their own neighborhood or own town, so you have to go somewhere else and, you know, get your name out there, all right? Now, he began to get managed by a guy named Mike Jeffries, all right? Now, I want you guys to pay very close attention to this Mike Jeffries guy, okay? Now, there's stories out there that Mike Jeffries was a part of the British intelligence, which is the UK's CIA, okay? But there are stories out there that Mike Jeffries was a mobster, a part of the mob. He was involved with the CIA, that's in Britain, I'm sorry. And, you know, there's a lot of things with this business, but I'm going to keep going and just keep a remembrance on Mike Jeffries, all right? So, with Jimi Hendrix actually out in England and performing music, right, he created the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Now, this is why I said Mike Jeffries was behind all of this, where they basically grabbed up random people, two random individuals, and placed them together and formed a group. Now, none of these people that were in Jimi Hendrix Experience, which was his band, none of them knew each other. Okay, now this was basically a technique which you would call being industry planted, right? Now, he signed his first distribution deal through Polydor in 1966, all right? And then he re-released the single Hey Joe, which actually hit the charts in the U.S., all right? Surprisingly, most people didn't think that he would, you know, reach that far, but he actually made it, okay, to the charts in the U.S., all right? Now, around this time, Jimi Hendrix started tapping into using frequencies, all right? Now, I've always told you guys about frequencies and how they work, all right? But, you know, once you start tapping into this, you know, it gets a little deep here. So while recording his debut album, which was called Are You Experienced, on the song Are You Experienced, and also on Third Stone from the Sun, Jimmy actually plays in reverse, okay, on the songs itself. Now, this had never been done, okay, back in the late 60s, early 70s. This had never been done before, okay? But Jimi Hendrix, like I said, was very aware of the spiritual aspect of a lot of these things, as far as with tapping into using LSD and astral projection. He was guided by some other spiritual forces, all right? Now, we're going to talk about what happened to Jimi Hendrix. So what happened? All right, was Jimi Hendrix murdered? Was he assassinated? Did he just overdose, right? Now, in 1968, after the death of Martin Luther King, all right, and the rise of the Black Panthers, Jimi Hendrix wanted to be more in tune with his culture, okay? So now at this time, he began to speak publicly about supporting the Black Panthers, all right? Now, like I told you guys, right, his manager, Mike Jeffrey, being a part of the UK CIA, which is British intelligence, right? That wasn't going to go well, okay, because at this time the Black Panthers was a big target, throughout the whole U.S., right? So it's nothing for you to, shut that down. Now, another thing that Jimi Hendrix took play in was his music started to change. Okay, now Jimi Hendrix music, when he first started to record on his album Are You Experienced, that album basically put a lot of people in a trance. It was to keep you sleep, right? And on his third album, Electric Ladyland, right, he began to start protesting, okay, after seeing the wrongdoings of what was taking place in the world. He began to start trying to wake people up through his music. All right, now we all know how this usually turns out, where the higher ups don't want these messages projected to the general public. All right, so I want you guys to pay close attention to this situation here. So while recording Electric Ladyland, Jimi Hendrix had stated he was being overworked, okay, by Mike Jeffries, all right? And on numerous occasions, Jimi Hendrix would basically beg Mike Jeffries to take a break and to rest. And Mike Jeffries would say, no, you got to keep working, just working them like a slave, right? Now, in order for Jimi Hendrix to, get some rest, okay, sad to say, Jimmy would turn to using heroin at this time, right? Now, there's no telling on who gave Jimi Hendrix the heroin. At this time in the 60s, heroin was as popular as weed is today, okay? But the funny thing about this story is Mike Jeffries, okay, actually took out a life insurance policy that was worth $2 million 2 days before Jimi Hendrix died. Okay, now James Tappy Wright, okay, who is an artist from the Animals, actually said that Mike Jeffries confessed to him that he killed Jimi Hendrix for the insurance policy. Okay, now we see these type of things today in the music industry, right? But it's always don't say anything. This is where that whole concept of the finger over the lip comes from, right? Where you have to keep secrecy. Nothing should get out. If you break the code, you're out of there, right? Now, a week before, Jimi Hendrix had asked Alan Douglas to become his manager instead of Mike Jeffries, all right? Now, the next day, after he had a meeting with Alan Douglas, miraculously, he was kidnapped and disappeared for 2 days, okay? Now, this is the weird part. Ironically, some goons that Mike Jeffrey knew just bust in the door and came and saved Jimi Hendrix. They knew exactly where he was located at. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, the mafioso things, that take place in the music business, right? So, do I think Mike Jeffries killed Jimi Hendrix? Absolutely. Okay, now Mike Jeffries died a few years later. All right, 8 days before his 40th birthday. But do I believe that Mike Jeffries killed Jimi Hendrix for the insurance policy? Absolutely. Okay, now Jimi Hendrix's estate is well worth over the 100 millions right now. All right, but this is what I got to tell you guys. You got to be careful in this business. All right. Now, Jimi Hendrix died September 18th, 1970. All right, and he was 27 years old. All right, now, you would put him in the 27 club as well. Now, like I said, he knew at a young age about spiritual practices and how to connect it to music, right? He knew about all of this. So with him knowing these things, it's not a doubt in my mind that he took a pact, okay, to become Jimi Hendrix, okay? Unbelievable skills where you're playing the guitar with your tongue, you're setting your guitar on fire, and people just love you. They just gravitating toward you. You know, that kind of power doesn't just come from practice, okay? That comes from spiritual guidance, all right? Now, this is a sad situation because he died young, all right? But, you know, people have to be very careful, man, and indulging in these type of things, all right? Jimi Hendrix was a great guitar player, great. You know, he played with a lot of people, and he's very well respected in the rock and roll community, all right? So with that being said, guys, I hope I discussed this and broke Jimi Hendrix's life down for you guys, and you had a clear understanding on a lot of these connections to the spiritual world and music, all right? Peace.